to the Clifton Worley Show. This week we have a special edition, Thanksgiving edition of the Worley Birds.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Josh. So guys, we're gonna start off by doing something a little bit different. We're gonna talk about what one musical thing we're thankful for this year, and it's we often. I know that you guys probably, if you have a couple things that you go to, which I'm not, I haven't gone to mine yet. You always kind of go around the table and talk about what you're thankful for, and it's always something like family or some important thing. But what I want to kind of talk about is the what we're thankful for musically this year, like a piece of gear or some musical growth or some kind of thing. So I'm going to go last on this one. So Clifton, why don't you start? What are you thankful for musically this year?
Musically, I'm going to get all sappy.
Oh boy!
And say that this podcasting has been a life-changing experience for me this year. I've done things I've never done before. I've gone places I've never gone. It's been a stretching experience, and I look back and I'm just thankful for it all. So that's something I'm thankful for. I'm going to say maybe a couple things. I was thinking about musical moments I'm thankful for, and there's one that it happened several years ago. I think I was in college, and we took a trip, my college trip up to the Mississippi Delta. We spent a week up there. I can't remember if it was Thanksgiving week or like the week after finals, the fall semester. And we were helping this. There's this mission there that was like going to hand out stuff for Christmas. And so we spent the week like helping them get set up. And so obviously we're in the Delta, and we were in Clarksdale, Mississippi, the place where Robert Johnson allegedly sold his soul to the devil. Mm-hmm. Highway 61,
the crossroads,
the crossroads, and so there is just a lot of leftover blues there. Old blues guys who, and it's hard to describe the Delta as somebody who's never been there. And that was my first time. But I went into a music store, and you would like this, Nick. That it was a store full of a bunch of old Junker acoustics.
Yes.
They were like, the Stellas, the Harmonies, all that stuff. And I'm in there, and there's this guy. He's a blind guy, and he's legit like stereotypical what you'd think would be the blues. And he's in there. He's playing like in an open E on a 12th string.
Nice.
And he's singing the blues. He doesn't know I'm there, and I pick up a guitar, and I just kind of join in jamming with him for about 30 minutes till my group comes in like trying to find me because I've been gone so long. and I don't know, that kind of struck a nerve in me. Like, I'll never forget that. And it was like the most legit, real, like musical moment I think I've ever had in my life. So I'm thankful for that. As
that
far
sounds
as
awesome, man.
Yeah, it was one of those things, like, if I ever have the opportunity to talk about musical moments, that's always like at the top of my list.
Oh man.
So
Cliff, that's like one of those things, like you hear like Luther Dickinson talk about that in some of these like newer players. They weren't really grandfathered in, I shouldn't say that, but a lot of the newer guys that like Luther Dickinson's in Mississippi All-Stars. And he had that pedigree from his father, but he talks about growing up with old blues musicians in the area and spending time with these people and learning from these people. And you had people like Bonnie Raitt who did the same thing, and George Thorogood did that too. And it's kind of like a pilgrimage of sorts. Like if you're into that kind of music, it's like something you have to experience, and that's something I really want to experience. That's a blessing that you got to do that, because it's not like there's a lot of these guys left.
No,
There's
there's
just
not.
they're passing on, and you're going to get people who are kind of the next generation, but they're not, and even the next generation's getting older too. I mean, so you're to the point now where we're kind of in this thing where one of the reasons why I'm such into bands like Jesse Ray and the Carolina Catfish and bands like Black Pistol Fire and all these two-piece bands that are just like doing this garage greasy roots blues inspired stuff. It's because that's kind of like rediscovering that old music. They're rediscovering players like Fred McDowell and double thumb country blues and riffs like that. A lot of people are playing guitar like that now, and I'm really grateful for that. But to hear the source is such a special thing.
Yeah.
It's so raw and powerful, and that's awesome that you get to. So you say you didn't notice that you were there. You just started playing. Did he like look up and was like, "What the what?"
No, like he just let me play with him. Like
that's
was
so cool.
Yeah, it was so. It's like such a pure moment, just like no, nothing to prove. Just he let me jam with him.
Did you get to talk to him at all?
No,
or?
like the dude, like even as I was leaving, like he was just still going on singing his blues song,
Dude, that's even cooler. That's even cooler that you didn't even talk to him.
It's like he's like a blues angel, like an emissary. He's just there, passing on the mojo to you, kind of a Blues Brothers type of thing.
Yeah.
Actually, that's kind of interesting because music stores usually go in and people are there to show off, a lot of times, and it's not really they don't really look fondly on somebody playing with them, or even talking to them a lot of times, I think. And I feel like that should be the experience you have when you go into a music store. Hey, somebody's playing something and you play along with them, and they're like, yeah, cool. Now I can respond and play with you. No, they want to play their shred licks or 3 shred licks over and over and over and over and over and over again for the next hour or so.
Yeah.
And try to get people to pay attention to them rather than play music and communicate. Hey, well, what about you, Nick? What are you thankful for?
Well, I don't think Clifton was done. I kind of waxed poetic all over his so he had something else. So you had podcasting and that musical moment, Clifton. What was the other thing you were going to mention?
I was just gonna say gear-wise, what I'm most thankful for. I think I've mentioned this like in episodes way back. But I have 2 Gibsons, both from the 50s, that were given as gifts to me by 2 different people. And I'm just blown away. Like, that's not something that I, deserve or, it's like I was given dream guitars, And so I'm very thankful for that, to have the opportunity to play those guitars and own them and be a good steward of it, hopefully.
Sure.
Cool, man.
Yes. Sorry about that, Clifton. I didn't realize you had 3. What about you, Nick?
I'm just grateful to play guitar again.
Yeah.
I mean, music was such a big thing for me for so long. I mean, that was my thing all through high school, high school, college, that was really something I was into. And yeah, I wasn't the best musician, but I was really into it. And when I got into traditional bow hunting and I got into writing and I got into all of that scene, plus having kids, it was kind of like guitar really took a back seat. And like I said, I sold a lot of gear to get like bows and things like that and gear and go on trips and things, and I'm thankful for all that stuff, but I didn't play guitar much at all, and I didn't know if I'd ever play again. There was an actual moment where I thought maybe I should just get rid of all this gear because this is clearly something I've left behind. I want to write and I want to do this now. And then when the girls got a little bit older and I kind of, I'd been hunting for 7 years and I was kind of like, okay, this is great, but this can't be all I do. And then I discovered, the Tone Mob and podcasts and stuff. And I got into these groups and made new friends and my guitar playing came back. I really wanted to play guitar again. And I mean, we haven't even been a year into this. I mean, I just started playing and I'm playing better than I ever have because I'm playing every day and I'm inspired. I'm inspired by people on the groups. And, and then I met you guys and this has been fun. And I'm thankful for all that. Like, I mean, it rejuvenated me musically. And I'm thankful that happened. I mean, I could have easily sold my guitars and just kept my mandolin or something for the fire and just said, that's it. I'm okay with that now. And it also, in the relationship with my dad too. I mean, Dad got into this when I did. I mean, he's always done that. And I mean, yeah, we got into hunting together too, but we're at different stages in life when it comes to hunting, where my dad is more, he's kind of at the point now where he'd rather not shoot anything. He'd rather just be in the woods, and that's fine. Where I'm not. I'm hunting for a reason. If I'm taking time away from my family, I gotta have something that makes up for that, or I've got to have a story at least and stuff like that. So you can only talk about hunting so much. And I mean, my dad and I were always passionate about music and guitar playing. We talked every day in college about guitars. I mean, that really rekindled things when he started getting back into it, when I got back into it, and we started talking about that again. So it's not all bows anymore. It's now it's music again, and we've always got something to talk about. And music's a powerful thing, and I'm just thankful that I found it again. How's that for sappy?
Sure.
Yeah, that's awesome, and that's the kind of stories I love to hear. Is I did this thing, something in life happened. I got back and reintroduced to this. And that I think that's the interesting thing about music and musical journeys is that if music gets down in you, it never really leaves, and it kind of always is tugging you back in.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So for me, guys, my what I'm thankful for is actually three things. The first being just how open and accepting the communities that we're in, the 3 or 4 different groups that we're in, have been with my drawing.
Yeah.
It has allowed me to buy a bunch of gear. It has allowed me that I wouldn't have bought for myself otherwise because I'm extremely cheap. It has made me some friends, and it's made me feel like, okay, well, I'm being creative in this way, and I'm being accepted for this creativity. Maybe other things that I'm doing can be accepted creatively, rather than just kind of sitting on them and doing for myself. That's the first thing. The second thing is, because we've already talked about it, and you know what? I kind of agree with both of you guys on your stuff. I'm thankful for that too. So I'm kind of trying to take a different tack on it, because I don't want to say that it's not valuable, because the things you guys have said, you said it far better than I can. That emotions and stuff, you guys can do that. I'll just skip that stuff. Yeah, Mr. Cellophane over here, right? Here's the thing. The second thing that I have is that retreat that I just went on recently was just huge for me. It made me realize that if I stop trying to be something I'm not vocally, and trying to be something I'm not guitar wise, I end up doing a lot better. I try to keep when I sing, I try to keep my voice flat. I try to not have any vibrato in my voice, and try to keep my natural tone out of it, because I don't really like the natural tone of my voice. And and I realized over that if I did that during that retreat, I would have no voice after the first set at all. Because that's why I was blowing my voice out when I sing for youth group, is because I was trying to be something that I wasn't. Kind of like we talked a couple episodes about your quirks and your habits. Now, it's not bad to realize what you're doing, but I really think that if I'm trying to be something I'm not going to get very far, right? And then that's the second thing. That was really moving for me. And then seeing all the kids, respond, and seeing all that stuff, that was great for me. Thanks. I'm very thankful for that. And the third thing is Rocksmith 2014. I'm very thankful for Rocksmith.
That's cool. You want to expound on that for me?
Yeah, I'll tell you why I'm so thankful for Rocksmith. It's because I've always been the guy. I can't sit down with Tab and really dig into something. I can't sit down with a recording and dig in and learn note for note. That's just not me. I get close and I think close is good enough, you know? And what Rocksmith does is it forces you, dude, to do everything right, because that computer does not make a mistake. If you don't bend up to that right note, it says you missed it. And that 99% does not become 100%, you know, on the rating. And you can slow stuff down super slow and see how things work. And most recently, I've noticed that the songs I don't really care for, like there's this one song by La Sera, Love That's Lost or Love That's Gone or something like that, and it's got all these great like kind of jazzy Nels Cline country riffs in it. And I don't care for the song at all because it's really just a stupid song. But the licks and the riffs in it are really cool. So I sit there and for an hour and just focus on one or two parts. And I realized all of a sudden that like half of the stuff is coming into my playing I'm on electric this week at church, and half of the stuff's coming into my playing for the church. Every key that goes in, it's like, okay, I've got these 5 new chords that I can play, and I've got these three or four different fills that I can put in now. That I'm learning, and I've learned every song that I learn on Rocksmith kind of gets applied to everything else because I'm learning it so deeply, you know, because I'm just not the guy that sits there with a recording and plays it for hours to get it exactly right. But I'll play a game for hours, and I was playing, you know, MMOs and stuff for hours, and playing music on Rocksmith where it's completely quiet, and I can do it without anybody, you know, being annoyed by it. And I can do it so that if I'm out of time or if I make a wrong note, it notices it where I wouldn't notice it, you know? So that's why I'm thankful for it. I think for somebody who knows how to play guitar, it's really useful. I definitely would not want to start from zero with it, because it does not teach you any technique whatsoever. It tells you to do the technique. It does not teach you how to do it correctly. You know, I would not have a beginner, you know, jump on Rocksmith. I'd have somebody who's played 2 or 3 years or played in the past and wants to actually learn how to get better and learn songs, jump on Rocksmith. So that's that's why I'm so thankful for it. And it's really a silly thing, but it's like it makes you, for electric, I'm not ridiculously on electric right yet, but because I just started playing about a year and a half ago on electric, and I've been playing acoustic mostly, and it's helped me gain an electric feel that I haven't had since I was 16 or 17 years old when I played electric all the time. So yeah, that actually kind of transitions really well into our next topic. Since I played acoustic for so long, and I think that Nick, you play mostly acoustic right now, but sometimes you dirty it up a little bit with an amp. And Clifton, you play a lot of acoustic too. What I wonder is, why don't people talk about acoustics and acoustic gear the way that they talk about electric gear? Why aren't there a dozen podcasts about that, like there are about electric, you know, pedals and stuff? What do you guys think? Whoever wants to start can start. What do you guys think?
I can lead off with this. And I actually play plugged in a lot more than what I lead on, but I don't think I'm as good of as an electric player as I am as an acoustic player. I find myself more interesting as an acoustic player for some reason. I don't know. Maybe it's just the style of music that I play. I don't know. I feel like everybody who plays amplified slide kind of sounds like two people. You know, it's either like the Dwayne Allman thing, or it's like a raunchy Jack White thing. You know, and there's more than that, but I don't know. I always feel like cliche when I play on an electric, and I don't feel that way with an acoustic. I don't know what that is. It makes me play differently. But I think the reason why acoustic people like Ryan Burke, name drop, think acoustics are boring is because I think a lot of it's the accessories. I mean, there's not really a lot of cool acoustic accessories. I mean, you can't really like mod acoustics per se. You can't really, you know, you can't really, you don't really run a lot of effects with acoustics. At least a lot of people don't. You know, a lot of people, you know, are going direct into a PA. They're not running things through cool amplifiers. There's just not a lot to it. And then with acoustic guitars also, I mean, to me, what's fascinating about acoustic guitars is the structure of an acoustic guitar and how the woods really play with different strings and things of that nature, and, you know, nut and saddle material and like all the bracing and like all of that. I mean, you're building a sound cavity. You're building a speaker cabinet almost in your guitar, which that's fascinating to me. That kind of thing I mean, people always talk about the different woods and stuff and electric guitars and stuff like that. And, whether that makes a big deal, I mean, yeah, I definitely noticed that some guitars that are ash, like an ash Stratocaster, will sound way different than an alder Strat. It will sound brighter. It just does. But with acoustics, you notice the difference. I mean, right away. I mean, the difference between my Parlor and my Kingston, one's just rules the bass spectrum, and then the other one's all treble. And I know that the body sizes are way different, and the depths and everything are way different. But I think a certain kind of person's drawn to that. There's not much the player can do to them once they buy them. They are what they are. You get it. It's more. I think it's more on the front end when you're looking to buy an acoustic. Plus, when you're talking about buying an acoustic, it's not as exciting as an electric guitar, right? I mean, it's not flashy. You're like, well, I'm looking for something that's got that throaty Martin sound, or I'm looking for something that's got that trebly Taylor sound, and how much further can you go with, like you could throw, there's not really anything super cool about, you can't always talk about strings, brass versus bronze, and you can't always talk about picks, and you can't always talk about bone nuts and saddles, and no one's talking about Inglewood spruce bracing and getting all jazzed about it in conversation. Like, I run out of content very fast, so that's kind of where I'm at with it. Now, there are a few people who are super interesting, like Monty Montgomery out of Texas. I've mentioned him before. He runs his acoustic through tube screamers and stuff like that, and into acoustic amps, and he's using the piezo pickup. But that guitar is almost like a Strat. It's kind of like he's just doing it in a different way. And my favorite thing about acoustics, as you guys know, is I love to throw magnetic pickups in them and hit them with distortion and stuff and compressors. That's something like Lincoln Durham does that, and it's awesome. My idol, when I first started playing, was Eric Sardinez, and he was taking resonators and putting lipstick pickups in them. And that was the first thing that drew me to that. I bought a resonator and did the same thing. I love that sound. I mean, it's basically like having a big arch top, but it sounds so much dirtier than that. And it opens up an element of the acoustic guitar that I think few people are really doing, even though the electric kind of started that way, with arch tops. You see those old arch tops that don't have pickups. They're just a pickup away from being an old jazz box. I mean, that's basically what they are. But that's kind of what I dig, and I think that's why acoustics are kind of boring. Like, once you get beyond that, the traditional acoustic point, there's not really much to talk about,
Yeah. What about you, Clifton? What do you think?
Well, I think that. Well, let me step back a little bit, and probably most of you guys who've seen my live streams and everything know that I predominantly play acoustic guitar. And there's a reason for that. I'm a worship leader, and that's what I'm predominantly playing when I'm leading. I just haven't gotten the feel for doing electric, when I'm playing rhythm. Not in that context. And I know there are guys who do that and predominantly do that, and that's cool as well, but I feel a lot more comfortable on acoustic. There's things dynamic-wise I feel like I can do with my acoustic that I might get too loud on electric, So it is my instrument of choice, but I experienced a little frustration from time to time because I don't feel like that the gear market has a lot of tools readily available. I mean, even if you go to a music store, a lot of times they don't have those things where you can try them out. I'm talking about direct boxes and acoustic effects, and I know that you can take, like Nick was mentioning, like a throw a tube screamer in front of a between a guitar and an amp or something like that and do some interesting things. But I'm talking about like the typical stereotypical acoustic sound, just a clean. There's not a lot of stuff available that you can just try out. And even like on YouTube, any pedal, like electric guitar pedal that you want to see, or amp, or pickups or whatever, like there are tons of resources out there where you can get a really good idea. But like I can go to YouTube and try to look for, there are videos of an LR Baggs venue or a session or a radial tone bone or something like that, but you don't get a good sense for what they do in those types of demos. I don't know that it translates. And I think like the biggest thing is because it's hard to replicate in a video what something sounds like coming through a PA.
Yeah. That's a big thing, isn't it? Because if you use the direct box, most of the time people, especially even electrics, and when they're demoing them, what they do is they take that direct box and they run it straight to the board, and you hear that board sound on the recording. You don't hear how the direct box mixes with the front of house or with a group or with a, what they should do is they should have a condenser out in like an audience land, set up a PA system and record. And that seems like a lot more difficult. That's the right way to do it, so that you can say, oh yeah, okay, this effect is going to push my acoustic to where it needs to be. It's going to put it so it sits nicely in a mix in a room.
Yeah.
And that's
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'm done.
I'm sorry. Speaking from the audience who is currently listening to this, they're going, what? Boring.
See, and that's the point we're making.
Dude, I got this sweet DI box, dude. You got to hear what it does to my sound. It warms it up so much. Yeah, it's made by, LR Baggs. Yeah, and it goes with that LR Baggs pickup I got. It's awesome. Yeah. It's just so much clearer than my other sound.
you can't see any of it because it's all like hidden and it doesn't look like anything, and you can't. It's not like a pedal where you can just shut off the DI and hear it without it. You'd have to have an ABY box so that you can go back and forth and say, okay, this is the raw sound, and this is the affected sound for sure.
And actually, acoustic players is so much. It's funny because it's like a different attitude where it's kind of like you want an effect to change your guitar, except for the transparent guitar snob people. Or the transparent overdrives. But I mean, the acoustic, like, you actually want effects that make your acoustic sound like your acoustic.
That's the thing. The nature of the piezo pickup, or the piezo, whatever you call it, pickup, is that it doesn't sound anything like an acoustic guitar.
Right.
A regular piezo pickup doesn't sound anything like an acoustic guitar. And so you need something to make it sound like that again. Or you can use like the Taylor system, which, gets resonance from all over different parts of the guitar, I think, if I remember correctly. And it kind of gets a more accurate sound, but it's still not the sound of that guitar, Yeah. And so you kind of, most acoustic stuff is either like a massive amount of EQ and some compression, like the body res, or it's modeling, where it models particular guitars. And that's less than interesting for a lot of people, I think, because you get basically what you're doing is you're putting on a set of headphones and you're taking one ear out and you're sitting there with an effects box and you're like, okay, that kind of sounds like my playing. Okay, that sounds one ear is your reference, one ear is your design, what you want to get. And that's what I do with my Zoom A3 is I sit there and I EQ until it sounds natural. And so that's going to be a really super boring video if I explain how to do that.
Yeah.
I can understand. And then usually when you're playing with it, I've got my A3 has a tuner, a boost, an anti-feedback button. And then I can also put it into a mode where I can turn on or off one effect, which I always have a modulated reverb going that's really subtle, so that I can hear it in my in-ears, but I can't hear it in the house.
Okay.
Because your in-ear sound for an acoustic is usually terrible, and having a little reverb is nice. But so it's just pushing one button. You're not tap dancing, and you turn it off, and it sounds like a quacky piezo, and nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah.
Nobody hear that quacky piezo sound unless you're playing like an 80s ballad song from Poison or something.
Yeah.
Which, man, I hate that sound. I cannot stand that sound.
No,
that stupid, just straight.
Me either. I mean, I'll just kind of go through my journey acoustically. I started with a Samick acoustic guitar when I was a teenager, and I got to where I needed to amplify it, so I got a Dean Markley Pro Mag, put it in,
Yeah.
and I was trying to go, direct to a sound system. Figured out that couldn't work, and
Ugh.
so I ended up,
Yeah.
like plugging it into my Crate GX30 amp just to amplify it,
Yeah.
which was terrible. And then
Yeah.
I got a Takamine, one with the cutaway and just the standard, in the late '90s, kind of what was popular with a piezo pickup, and it did okay. There was onboard EQ you could kind of adjust a little bit, but I got to be very displeased with that over time as I got to be a better player. And realized that this sounds kind of not like an acoustic guitar. So about that point, I got my Gibson acoustic, and I loved the way that sounded. And there was a little short stint where I was taking an AKG C1000 and miking it up, like as I was playing like with the worship team, and realized that was not very good to have a
No.
condenser mic on stage like that. First of all, you couldn't run yourself through the monitors, so you couldn't hear yourself without
Yeah.
really getting some feedback. So you kind of were just, shooting in the dark. And then I got to the point where I, was leading worship full time, and I picked up a cheap Martin, and I installed an Anthem, LR Baggs Anthem SL in it, and that was my first like pickup install. And I took and that gave me what I think I was missing. Like it gave you the piezo, like the good part of the piezo. And then it had a microphone, and it gave you the qualities of a microphone, and you were able to blend between the two to get the the positive of both worlds. And and then about that time, I put a LR Baggs M1A sound hole pickup in my Gibson, and I used that for a while until I changed it over to a Lyric, which I felt sounded more natural. It was a microphone in there with a volume knob, and even it has its limitations because LR Baggs to me has a very mid-rangey, throaty sound that can get kind of quacky if you don't work on it some. And then I got my Taylor, that has the Fishman prefix in it, and I love that system. I think I shared a video with you, Josh, last week, going direct to the board, and I just love the way that sounds, which makes me very snobby when it comes to like other guitars when I have to use them and plug them in using that same signal chain, because it just never meets my expectations. Like my Martin Dreadnought Jr., I love that guitar, but like when I plug in using the Fishman Sonotone that's in it, it is very much lacking. And what I found in that one is that if you can use some EQ, you can kind of EQ out some of the negative things, kind of do a little bit of subtractive EQ, and you can get it dialed in. But what you have problems with is like if you're going through a console and you've got this Taylor that sounds amazing like direct, and then you change over to another guitar, like you need something in between that can manipulate that EQ, because you're not going to have, in most typical applications, you're not going to have a sound person who can do that on the fly for you. So I'm kind of thinking about like DIs that have EQ on it, and like a pair of DI may be the ticket, something like that. But basically on acoustic guitar, there are, if you do any research, there are 4 bands that tend to be kind of like the preset that you can manipulate an acoustic guitar, and it's a little bit different than like the EQs that might be for an electric guitar, the same frequency bands. And so learning, identifying what those are on an EQ mix and manipulating them is like the most important thing. And I think you can use that as a tool, like on any kind of pickup, even if it's piezo, like to get the sound that you need. Going back to that's super nerdy. And
So, like, to sum up this entire conversation to an outsider, this would be, hey, I got this new DI box that makes my guitar sound exactly like it does when it's unplugged.
Yeah.
It's sweet. Sweet.
Going back to the videos things though, like I'm looking at products like the TC Electronic, like acoustic res, and I can't on those videos. I can't tell a discernible difference when they use that pedal, and it could be just the way it's recorded. And it's kind of like, I really want to try this out. That could be a great tool. It's in a price point that I would be attracted to.
Oh yeah,
but I really can't tell what it does.
The problem is that almost every video they're using a Taylor. And, almost every video that I watch, because I was thinking about it too. I was thinking, man, that'd be cool to get that and 2 or 3 other mini pedals instead of my A3. And I could just pop it on my board, and then, okay, I've got my effects for both acoustic and electric, and I can bring the same board for both. But the problem is that they're using every one of them with a Taylor expression system, which it sounds good out of the box, If they just used a regular piezo pickup, Ibanez or Martin or anything with just a regular pickup, then you can. I think I found 1 or 2 videos where you could really hear a difference, because what it does is it basically kind of emulates that expression system, and it just kind of turns it into a regular sounding acoustic with a little bit less dynamic range than when you play something acoustically. It kind of does it does enough compression and enough EQing that it makes it sound like just a nice recorded acoustic. It doesn't really sound like a live acoustic, but it sounds like a really nice recorded acoustic that I can hear. Where
you know what probably the worst selling effects processor of all time is?
What's that?
The Zoom 504 acoustic processor.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I know a guy that had one of those, actually.
The church had 4 of them at one time, and everybody had one of those at one time at the church. The Zoom 504.
Really?
And it's like, I'm looking at the thing, and I'm listening to that thing, and I'm like, man, this thing sounds terrible. Yeah. This thing sounds terrible. And I mean, what it did well is it boosted the signal enough, and it gave a little bit of reverb. But basically, they never got. It was so difficult to do anything with it that you just used one of the presets and you set it there and you left it. And
dude, that thing had 30 banks worth of like storage.
But they were also subtle, and so and you couldn't figure out how to use. It was just not fun to use. The A3 is a little confusing too, but once I've learned to use it, it actually gets a pretty natural sound. But thinking back on it, if the body res had been available and I knew anything about anything, I would have bought that and maybe a Hoff Mini and a compressor and a tuner and been good, Mm-hmm. It's definitely something that I think should be talked about more, because the acoustic is, to be honest, way more popular than electric. Way more popular than electric guitars, acoustic guitars are, and there could be a real niche for that if people could get stuff going where you could actually review this stuff in an interesting manner, for sure. But I think
Go ahead.
No, what is there? Because I don't see anything.
There is a group. I mean, there is a group that's really into it, but it's the acoustic fingerstyle instrumentalists now. If you're into that Candy Rat Records culture, where you're all about beatboxing on your acoustic and doing all the tapping and the Michael Hedges stuff, then I'm sure that community, they can talk about that for days and all the different. I remember when I was kind of into that for a while, but I realized I didn't have enough coordination. I mean, I was a failed drummer to begin with. Beating on my acoustic didn't sound like I'd be very good at that, and as it turns out, I wasn't. But I remember like everybody was talking about the Sunrise pickups. You had to have one of those, and then you had to have a combination of microphone and the discs underneath. So you had a sound, like you had to mic up your soundboard underneath the guitar. So when you hit it, so they were placing the discs at different parts of their of the acoustic body, and then you had the blend. You had to blend everything together, and then there's delays and stuff like that. And And in fact, I would imagine that if you're one of those guys and you want to tour or whatever you want to do, it's probably kind of a nightmare to figure out. Like, you probably have to have your stuff in order to figure out, okay, I don't know if they tour with amps or if they're using good DI boxes or what they're doing, but you got a lot more stuff going on there than you would with a normal acoustic guitar player playing folk songs,
For sure.
Sure, there's a community. It's just not, maybe it's just we're not in that community. I mean, I don't know. We got a lot of people who play in church that use acoustics, but nobody's really doing, like, I can't name anybody in our groups that is like predominantly just an acoustic player that talks about acoustic music, and and it hasn't really been mainstream since like Dave Matthews and Tim Reynolds. Now you got that folk revival, the bluegrassy folk revival, and really they don't have much to talk about other than the guitar and like the microphones they use. In fact, the microphones are probably the most interesting thing they talk about now. When like I've been sending you guys links for the Milk Carton Kids, and they've got, like, they used to tour with like 4 microphones, 2 for the guitars and 2 for their voices, and now they only tour with like 1 or 2, and they had them special made by this guy, and I know there's a world of microphones that is just a complete rabbit hole that I know nothing about. But I don't know, maybe we're just not in those communities, and acoustic guitar is really exciting, but everybody we know thinks they're boring. I guess
that could be it. And there's so many like problems you have to overcome. Like when you think about, I remember Ryan Adams talking about when he got heckled at the Ryman in Nashville, early on in his career. And he was out there literally on stage with an acoustic guitar, and I think he said 2 condenser mics that were like, the gain on them was like jacked all the way up, so it could catch all the dynamics of his playing and can be heard. And he was saying that what was throwing him and made him like go off, and I'm not justifying his actions, but made him go off on a guy that was heckling him in the stage is because like he could hear that guy over himself. And that is one of those things that, like, if you're playing live shows, unless like you're playing this real intimate environment, like there's just so many live sound issues. And I think like a lot of acoustic players are predominantly, in my world, like, are playing worship with it, and they're with a band with drums and bass and all that stuff, and so they want the easiest option where they can just plug in that guitar direct to a sound system and get the best possible results without a bunch of stuff that they have to worry about. And that's why I think the Taylor is so popular in that world.
Oh yeah. Idiot proof.
Yeah, it's idiot proof.
Yeah, and maybe there's a big difference between like maybe plugged in acoustic finger stylus and that kind of thing, and the folk bluegrassy crowd, like Abbott Brothers and stuff like that. And it's just 2 totally different outlooks on it.
Sure.
I don't know. Well, obviously it is. I don't know where I'm going with this.
No. That's a good point. But we have another thing coming up. Tomorrow is Black Friday.
Yeah.
And there's lots of good gear deals out there. I was telling you guys before we started about one that I'm going to talk about. But it's kind of fun to sit there and dream about it, I think. And I think a lot of times that's what I like to do, because I don't really want any more stuff. I mean, I might get some more things here or there, but I mean, I've got a couple pedals I have my eye on. Yes, Black Friday's coming up. Did you guys see anything that's interesting to you that you would love to have but maybe aren't going to get, or that you are going to get?
Who wants to go first?
Anybody?
I will. Okay. No.
That's what I was going to say here. No.
Go ahead, Clifton.
That's it?
Okay. Hey,
serious.
Does Reverb have a Black Friday sale? Because there's a really old harmony with a broken neck that I want for $40 that I don't want to pay $40 for.
It just depends, but yeah, they do. I think they typically run a 15% off sale.
Yeah.
Which leads me to one thing that's caught my attention. Doug Cower put out on his group that he was going to have 15% off running up to Black Friday, as he's trying to fulfill as many orders as he can for Christmas. And that makes the Titan like ridiculously cheap. I mean, that's like $200 off on a Titan.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, for $1,100 you can get a Titan. And
Can you do it?
Oh man, I'm thinking of ways to do it.
Clifton, you've literally been talking about a Titan for over a month now.
No, you've been talking about it for a year almost, right?
Yeah, since I went to Cowerfest, and yeah, I mean, it's so close, but I'm kind of like, I would really like to fund that like somehow by the sale of some other gear, and right now I'm like really happy with the gear I have, so.
Yeah,
it's a hard leap.
Go fund me, right?
Yeah.
Go Kickstarter for Clifton.
Yeah. The thing is, I'd hate to see you without a telly. Without owning a telly.
Yeah.
That's probably what you'd have to do.
Yeah,
but,
I'd have to sell my
just
telly.
Like that telly just looks right. That just looks right on you. That's what you should have.
I thought the Martin was going to have you sell your Taylor, and that was going to be it.
Now I'm like thinking maybe the Martin might need to go.
Oh man, you're not going to get your money back from it. You might as well keep it. If nothing else for the girls.
Yeah,
because it's the right size for them.
Literally dedicated an episode to that Martin.
Yeah, he talked about it. You're so thrilled with it.
Now I got to go back and delete it because everything I said was untrue.
I said it was already untrue, so you probably can.
Yeah. So I noticed today, I went and looked. Usually Black Friday is a day when I get to rejuvenate my supply of blue jeans and socks. That's Black Friday for me. So, but I did notice on Guitar Center they have the Mustangs, the Bullet Mustang Squires that Ryan has been talking about on the Hum, and that everybody have been looking at, and the two new colors that are so cool. There's the surf green, and there's an Olympic white with a parchment pickguard. This 3-ply parchment pickguard, $119. That is just crazy, for a guitar that is definitely playable. That's much better than that Epiphone SL that everybody's looking at.
Yeah.
And $119 for a really attractive instrument with humbucking pickups, which solves a lot of issues with the cheap instrument. And then I've played a couple. They have really nice necks and really nice heart, pretty easy to mod. And what I was actually telling a student last night, or actually his mom, it was that with electric guitars, they try to put too much into the value instruments, and they try to put have too much going on, and a lot of times you'll get something that that fails in one area, whether it be the tuners or the bridge or the pick, but it seems like that particular model is just knocking it out of the park quality wise. And for sheesh. I mean, I don't want another guitar, but I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. So would you do
Great
anything
deal.
to it if you got it?
I'm just not a modder,
Yeah.
I mean, I might do something, especially that white one. It's like that's that right there is my color. It's my colors. It's my look. And I mean, if I got it, I would probably just stick with it. Maybe put pickup covers on it, but even then, those black pickups and the black, Fender and Squier, they do such a great job of actually making everything tie together.
Yeah.
And so it's like I don't like the model look of them because they actually look good. Where if I got a Gibson, I'd probably have to change something about it because they always put an element there that doesn't match. Whether it be the pickup rings or the pick guard or the knobs, they always put something in there. It's like, well, got to change that if I buy it.
Yeah.
Some weird.
Well, Epiphone's tuners too are usually just garbage.
Yeah.
I've never had an Epiphone. I've had a couple Epiphone Les Paul standards, and I've had a cheaper Epiphone. I had an Epiphone Dot. The tuners on all of those were just junk, and and I know the SL's tuners are garbage. I mean,
Oh,
those
yeah.
are because you can just tell when you look at them. They're those cheap, boxy, slip. Then Ryan did that video, and they just slip like crazy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't notice that with Squire. Like Squire's stuff now seems really solid. Like they have been for a while. And the tuners really aren't that bad.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really much. I think if I bought one of those, and I am interested, that sounds. If I had the money, I'd go buy one of those. They look great. And I love the new colors. The offsets, though, I guess what's stopping me from something like that is those offset fenders are so cool looking, but I'm not into having humbuckers in them. I think if I wanted one, I want normal like Jag pickups in them.
Yeah.
But the thing,
that's what does it for me. The whole package,
the thing is, at that price point, you're going to get those harsh ceramic, bitter sounding single coils. And the thing is, a cheap humbucker sounds way better than a cheap single coil for the most part.
No, you're right there. You're absolutely right.
It's mudded up just enough that you can't hear the cheapness.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree. I mean, I think that those are legit. They look like they knocked that out of the park, and that a lot of kids could do a lot worse.
I mean, yeah, man. Oh,
do they have a tap on them? Do the cheap ones? I can't remember.
No.
No.
You could probably easily. Oh yeah, I didn't Ryan say something about that they're not easy to split or something like that?
No, he said there's only two wires coming out when he pulled it out. There's not enough for
I
it.
remember him saying that now.
You know what I would do with
But
that guitar though? The moment I bought it, I would get those GFS Dream 90s.
Oh yeah.
Yep. I think that would
amazing.
rock.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be really cool.
Yeah. So we've talked about our Black Friday stuff. I'm surprised because I thought you guys would have some really smoking things that you wanted, like the.
Okay, I was lying. I do want to get in on this.
Okay.
We pulled it out of you.
I'm talking all over you guys today.
Yeah, it's like the episode of The Slum.
My brain's a little bit. I'm just playing the part of Phil. Sorry, Phil. I don't mean to bag on you, man. But I kind of want to see what Sinusoid's doing.
Oh yeah.
I can see that.
I joined their super secret group because I've made a prior purchase, and I want to know. Okay, so I've wanted a TechFlex cable for a while now.
Yeah.
And I want the Van Dam, the white one. With forest green TechFlex. And I either want the stubby ends, the GHS stubby ends, or I want to go with the ridiculous mahogany ended ones. I don't know why. I think you can get those with TechFlex, but I think it would look super sweet plugged into one of these junky acoustics I have.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, I also need I would at some point. I wanted to buy the slivers for a long time, but they've been sold out forever. So I've kind of just been dealing with what I've got for a while. But I'm gonna have to do that too. But I want to see what they're doing on Black Friday and maybe give the boys at Sinusoid some business. It's been several months since I bought anything. I think my original cables. So yeah. I'm looking at that.
This would be my first go around too to see what they do on Black Friday. I heard that's like the only time they ever do any kind of sales.
Yeah, besides the discounts that you sometimes get from, supporting certain podcasts that we will not mention. So, we have next up is picks. Do you guys have anything interesting musically that you can pick out for us this week?
I do.
Okay. Go ahead, Clifton.
I discovered somebody this week that I am just. It's like one of those epiphany type things. My cousin sent me. I said, "Hey, what are you listening to?" And he sent me this name of this guy to look up, and I started playing it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is like everything I want to hear right now." Like the tones on this are good, the music's good, the songwriting's good, and I didn't pay attention to the name of the guy too much, and I'm sitting there, and 10 minutes in, it dawns on me that this is like somebody famous, like their son. And it was Lucas Nelson. It was Willie Nelson's son. And I was just blown away. And I did some research on the guy and realized that he's been out there like working hard playing shows, doing music for the last 10 years or so, and he's just been under the radar this whole time. And I really think that this new album that he just released is going to be kind of his breakout album. I mean, just watch and see. And so I think it's going to be one of those albums people years from now go back and say that's an amazing album. So I'd say go check out the new Lucas Nelson album.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds. Yeah, I heard him on Walking the Floor, and then I went on a little binge on Spotify. Man, he is, like I was saying when we were talking, he's like alternate universe Willie Nelson kind of. He does some of that stuff, and he's got that. It's more like he's got that spirit of Willie Nelson rather than actually. And he kind of sounds like him a little bit, but a bit. Again, sometimes a lot.
It's more of a modern take on Willie.
Yeah, yeah. And I kind of compared him in our thing with Jacob Dylan, in that he really does have a lot. Jacob Dylan has a lot more Bob Dylan than what he thinks he does. In his songwriting and in his. It's just that he's not mysterious, and so I think that's why people maybe don't like him quite as much. But he's just kind of right flat out there,
Yeah.
Or the fact that his song was played way too damn much in the 90s.
Yeah, that one song, that one highlight. But
one headlight. It's Jacob Dylan and the Wallflowers.
He's actually
it's the old single.
He's actually good though. It's actually a good song. If you look at it,
that album is very good. It is.
Yeah.
What's your pick, Nick? Actually, before that, I just wanted to say I didn't even know Willie Nelson had a kid.
I didn't either.
It's unbelievable. You would think that he just had like 30 kids.
Yeah,
he probably does. Who knows?
But I don't know why I never thought, but that's super cool. I think all the offspring from all these different bands should get together and form a super group.
What you need to do is get Shooter Jennings, Lucas Nelson.
No, they should not.
Ben Haggard, and they could all do the Highwaymen Revisited.
That would be sweet.
That would be okay. If you start saying that they should do an Eagles type of thing, you don't need to ruin any more stuff, guys.
No.
New Eagles.
Okay.
Eagles Revisited. All right. My new pick is I really like. Okay, so Blackbird Hill, Songs to Keep the Devil Busy is the EP, and it's of course what I like. It's two guys. One guy it's the lead singer and the guitar player, and then a drummer. They play that garage rocky blues kind of thing. And it's only a 5 song EP, and that's the album I downloaded. They have another album, but what drew me to him is I follow him on Instagram, and that guy, the lead singer, started playing one of those Jay Tercer Delta 6s. Or no, it wasn't Jay Tercer. I'm sorry. It's Eastwood. It's the Eastwood Delta 6, which is the baritone like resonator guitar they have, which like electric. I think it's baritone. It looks like a baritone. The neck looks really long on it. But I was drawn to the sounds coming out of the CD. Like it was
can I play that? Like pull it up for a second, because I haven't listened to that. I just want to take a little sample here.
Did I send that to you?
No. That sounds
cool. Oh yeah, my jam.
Now I'm gonna make you go listen to that before I get
I sent that
accused of pirating.
Good.
Yeah.
I sent that to Devin a couple days ago. Devin Equits. While he
Devin?
was,
oh.
Yeah, not to be confused with Kevin Equits. I sent it to Devin Equits.
That Devin guy is such a wild animal.
Yeah,
He's trouble.
Devin was filing frets at like 6 a.m. And he's like, "What was the name of that band?" And I sent him like 5 bands in a row. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Like they're all pretty much the same band, but they all have a different thing going. But yeah, Blackbird Hill, Songs to Keep the Devil Busy. That EP is really good. Hot Foot Powder Blues. That's a really good song. Them Wolves Are Mine. That's a good song. But maybe next week I'll branch out and go into something a little bit different. Oddly, aside from this album, which is super raunchy, I've been listening to, like I said, the Milk Carton Kids, which is the exact opposite. It's kind of like they're a Michigan band. They've been around since 2011. It's just two guys playing acoustic and singing Simon and Garfunkel style, kind of.
Awesome.
Super good songs. They got a song called Michigan. That's like one of their first hits that is really good. I mean, it's been in my brain for 2 days now.
Yeah.
And they're also really, really funny between songs. So check out some of their live videos. They're the Milk Carton Kids.
What about you, Josh?
Oh, well, I've got another documentary this week, and it's it's kind of interesting because I had never really heard much about this band. I kind of heard about them, but I was just kind of flipping through music documentaries on Netflix, and it was the Tragically Hip, long time running. And here's the thing: I watch it, and in the first couple minutes, is like, I hate this.
Mm-hmm.
I hate this because it's one of those typical this singer is kind of over the top but not really. He kind of sounds like he's like a theater Broadway style singer, and he's singing over this really good solid sounding band. And like I start listening to the story of it, and they would just playing more music, and by about 15 minutes in, I'm like, yeah, this is actually really good. And it's like I go and I look at the reviews. It's like everybody on there who didn't know about these guys before, because they're like Canada's band, the Tragically Hip, I guess, are like Canada's band. And everybody in Canada loves them. And the guy sings this really obtuse college rock style of lyrics, but he kind of sings it in this really theatrical way, and he wears kind of outlandish outfits and everything with a really solid band behind him. And I'm watching these big arenas sing these college rock lyrics, these really introspective, personal, I just took a philosophy class and a singing class, so I'm going to have a band, right? And kind of lyrics, and you've got these arenas of like thousands of people singing them, and by the end I'm like, yeah, this is actually really good, and I really like the singing. And it's just a really interesting transformation, because for me, if I start hearing so much of what I think of as artifice in a music, I'm probably not going to keep listening. But it was such an engaging documentary that I kept listening, and I came out kind of like, okay, I want to hear more of this music now.
Yeah. I found myself do that before, like watch a documentary on a band, and it kind of draws you in. It's like their story draws you in, and you want to check out their music, when before, like, just hearing their music superficially, like, it doesn't make much of an impact.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's one that I can recommend too. They had exactly the opposite of experience. There's a P-Lander Z documentary on Netflix, and I was watching. I'm like, yeah, okay, this is kind of cool. They're kind of like a theatrical punk band. And then by the end, I'm like, yeah, they're just kind of a crappy Aquabats. And the guy doesn't know what he's doing. They're just kind of a crappy Aquabats, because at least the Aquabats have, really tight, solid music. And these guys are just, they're kind of playing on their theatrics. And by the end, the guy's lost his drummer, lost his bass player. And then the second bass player, he's kind of lost too. And it's like, you guys are just playing kind of average punk with some costumes and stuff and some theatrical parts, and it's okay, but man, there's a lot of people out there that are doing it better than you.
Yeah.
And the guy's like all cocky about it. I'm like, okay, you're just it's just music, man. It's kind of like, it's interesting to have exactly the opposite response from a documentary about a band that I thought I would like, because at the beginning I really liked it because it was this trashy punk with a little bit of the silly theatrics and Japanese style goofy game show stuff mixed in. I mean, that's my thing. But by the end, I'm like, man, that's stupid. So do not watch the P-Lander Z documentary if you like him. Do watch the Tragically Hip documentary no matter what. That's my pick, because that was just a fun documentary, and it's sad and moving, and you're crying and you're laughing, and all the way through it's just really fascinating. So that's my pick for the week. Long time running, Tragically Hip. All right, I think it's time. Are you ready? Are you ready, Nick, for the Mojo moment? I love
love that. That's my favorite part of the show.
I probably should have tuned this first.
That's Mojo, man. Out of tune is Mojo. I love that. That's my favorite part of the show.
This is not Mojo. This is poor not taking care of an instrument that has been sitting that you played all last night and didn't touch until you recorded. No, I actually have tuners coming in for this today too. Those tuners
sweet.
I ordered. Yeah, today for the Mojo Minute, I'm going to talk about my Kingston, actually, which the one you heard was not my Kingston, so that's a fail on my part. This is going really well so far. My Kingston is, I actually posted it on 60 Cycle Hum, and when I got it finished, and it didn't really get a whole lot of responses. I think I posted it at a bad time. I think I posted it on a weekend. And plus it's an acoustic, and again, that's not really the group for it. I've been struggling to find places to post acoustic stuff, which is I'm kind of happy that we're doing more on the Worley Facebook page, because that's kind of a place you can do it.
Yeah.
But this is kind of a special guitar to me. So it's a 1960s Kingston 12-string. That's what it was. And there's a story behind it. I went over to my father-in-law's for Christmas one year. This was before Jess and I had the girls, and they were living in Detroit. And my father-in-law, Mike, has all these project guitars that he's had for a really, really long time. He's got some really nice guitars. He's got a vintage Guild, which is beautiful. He's got a custom-made walnut guitar by a builder in Detroit. He's got a Martin 12-string. He's got some really nice instruments. And he's also got some junkers laying around. And for some reason I end up getting these junkers. Like 2 Christmases in a row I got these acoustics, but I've fallen in love with them. And the Kingston was one of them. I told him I wanted a 12-string, and for Christmas that year he brought out a case. This was probably like 7 years ago. No, it would have been before kids, so 7 years ago. And I opened up this case, and there was this rad 12-string that had like a Gibson headstock on it, this crazy tiger gaudy 60s pickguard, and a floating bridge. And there was actually the bridge was literally floating. There was no strings on the guitar, and it was just laying in the case. So it was a floating bridge that was actually floating in the case, because there was nothing to hold it on there. And he had broken the other one, and he bought a new bridge for it, and he just hadn't gotten around to put it on there. Now, I pretty much thought the guitar was unplayable because the neck had cracked at the heel. I mean, completely busted off. That's actually pretty common on those old imported 12 strings. Either the bridge lifts or the heel cracks because they can't handle the tension. They probably should be tuned down a whole step. And not just left laying in E, with a set of light 12 strings. So I knew I wouldn't be able to really play it. I kind of liked it and just kind of thought it would be a wall hanger. I ended up trying to cut a new saddle for it and stuff like that. Ended up breaking the bridge that came with it. I cracked it right in half. So that was kind of the end of the project for me. I put it in the case and thought maybe I'll put it on the wall someday when we get a house, and it sat there, and it's been there up until earlier this year. Actually, what was it, a couple months ago? I really wanted to buy a beat up harmony on reverb, and I thought, well, I don't really have the money to do that right now, but I really kind of want a project. And I was looking through my guitars, and I found that gig bag, or that case with that 12 in it, and I thought, well, I know it won't hold tension for a 12 string without ridiculously light strings, and I broke the bridge, but what if I turn this into a 6 string? So what I ended up doing is just that. I took the saddle or the bridge, and I glued it back together. I sanded it, and I refinished it. I got a bone saddle. I installed the bone saddle, and I got it to where I wanted it to be. I re-glued the heel just to make sure everything was cool, and I sanded it down. And then stained it, and then there was some places that were lifting, like the binding on the neck was lifting, and some binding around the acoustic was lifting. The binding on the sound hole, which has got a bound sound hole, which is really cool. So I actually re-glued all that and clamped it, and then I recut the nut, and did all the filing and the filling and used the super glue baking soda nut trick to do all that. That forms an instant bond, and you can redo your nut really easy that way. So I did that, and then I took all the tuners off except for 6 for a 6-string, and then I had this ridiculously like long headstock with no tuners on it. So I decided to cut that in half, and on a saw, and just kind of I preserved the old medallion on the top of it and put that on there, and I filled in the holes. So I did all of that. Then I got a cheap magnetic pickup. I put that in a sound hole, wired it to a jack, and then now I got this electric acoustic that's like really, really, it's just rad. It's like totally one of a kind. It's got a really good sound to it, except basically the truss rod can't be adjusted anymore. It's stuck in there, and since the neck broke, I don't even think it works. So it is bowed a little bit, but I'm just running a set of like 11s on there, and I'm tuning it to open E right now, and I put the saddle down, and the action's really not that bad. But I ended up with a really interesting instrument, and I write so much better on that than any other guitar I have. For some reason, I play it differently. It's a little more difficult to play, so I think I come up with things that are a lot harder to do. And I'm willing to bet that I'm pretty much one of the only people that can play this guitar, just because it's basically a slide guitar. Like you can fret okay up to the 5th fret, but it gets a little high after that, and I'm still able to fret on it, but then it starts to feel like a snare drum a little bit, like you're like beating on it more than you're actually playing. But I can dig in super hard with the slide and with my finger picks, and it takes it like a champ. Like it is the slide guitar. Like it's a really nice sounding instrument. Plus the body's huge and the neck's a bat and it's super wide. So even it's still got that 12-string spacing, but now it's 6 strings. Yeah. So and the body is so big, like I have a hard time holding it. Like if I play it too long with a certain way, like my arms will get tired. So it's really big, but it also gives it a lot of bass response too. And it's just, I don't know, it's really cool. The other thing about it is I found out my father-in-law about that when he was like 15 years old. And it like never really worked for him, and it broke, so he kind of left it alone, and I was kind of able to rejuvenate that guitar, and it was ready to go to the trash bin or on the wall, and now it's something you can make music out of. And I guess if you want to, I guess that's a pretty good definition for me of what Mojo is. That guitar has a story in it now, and it's going to continue to make stories, and I think it sounds great. It doesn't sound like anything else I have, and I mean it's I'm not even sure. I think the sides are laminate. Pretty sure the top's hardwood, the back's probably hardwood. I don't know much about it. I've only ever found one more Kingston on Reverb, and that thing was also demolished. So I'm pretty sure they were pretty much a crap guitar. But I love it, man. I dig it. I love to play it. It sounds great amplified. I really wish I'd have put a volume knob in it, but I didn't, because the guitar body was so long. After I drilled the hole for the jack, I realized I couldn't, like, I had my whole arm, and I'm a big guy. I had my whole arm down the hole, and I barely touched the end.
Yeah.
And I was stuck in there like a raccoon with like food in its hand. Yeah. Like, and I couldn't get my hand out of the guitar unless I opened up my hand. Like, so my wife was watching me do it, and she's like, do you need help? And I was like, no, I'm all right. I had the guitar on its headstock, and my forearm all the way up in the guitar, holding the jack with the tip of my fingers and trying to screw it in. And that's before I learned the output jack trick, where you could like take a actually, this might help some of you guys. If you ever, because I had to do the same thing with my parlor because the hole was actually too small for my hands. Yeah. But if you put an output jack in an acoustic, a good way to do it is you take like an old crappy cable, and you pull the end off it. Yeah. So there's all that's on there is the jack, just the exposed jack. So you take that, and what I actually did was I snaked I left the jack, but one of the jack ends outside the guitar, plugged into or outside the guitar, and I put the other one through the jack. And that way you can run the jack through you can actually run the cable through the output jack hole and pull it until the output jack actually pops out the hole. And then you can hold it there just like that, and then you can just tighten it. And that worked really, really well. And I was trying all kinds of ridiculous stuff like dental floss and a dentist hook and like all this other stuff, trying to fish it out of this big body. And I'm like, wow, I feel like an idiot. This is like the easiest thing to do in the world if you do it that way. So that's a good tip for you guys. If you ever need to do
tone hack.
It is. It's a total tone hack. I should have posted that in there. In fact, I almost did a video about it. But then the kind of shoddy rig I had doing it kind of broke after I did it. And I was like, all right, well, I'll do this better next time. But anyway, what I'll do is I'll post a video of that Kingston soon. I'll have time off on Thanksgiving when this drops. So I'll do that while you guys are all stuffed with turkey. I'll get on there and shred out on my boring acoustic for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you. Actually, I can't believe I forgot to ask you when you did that. How does your father-in-law feel about that? Has he heard you play in it?
He really. Well, I kind of had this romantic image of in my mind of him playing it around campfires and stuff when he was a kid and a whole hippie kind of thing, because he used to go to Wheatland every year and stuff. And literally when I ran, like I took wet wipes and ran it over the guitar, and you wouldn't believe the soot I pulled off this guitar. Like it was the rag was black.
Huh.
Like the guitar looked so much better when I was done. So, I texted him and I said, "Look, I brought your guitar back to life." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I never really played that one."
So he had no attention at all to it. He was like, "This is headed for the bin."
What's that?
He's like, "This is headed for the bin." Oh, I know who will like it.
He literally had a case of an old crappy guitar in it, and he gave it to me for Christmas.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? That means he knows you, because that's like the best thing he could possibly give you is a crappy guitar that needs work, right?
Oh, no, and for real, I dig it. He could do that every year, and I would be a happy guy.
Yeah, I could just imagine Nick hanging out at the dumpster, being like, "What guitar is going to come here today?"
Oh, if I had a music store that actually threw stuff away, I need to start going to flea markets.
Yeah.
I there's a big flea market in outside of Cadillac, Josh, outside of Lake City.
Yeah.
And I've been wanting to hit that up for guitars. I don't know if you've ever done it, but
that's. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
That building there, that the flea market was outside of Lake City. We actually had a furniture store in that building for a year and a half. That stone building.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah. That's. I don't know. I think they still do it, but that's.
They got a big sign out front that says "We eBay."
Yeah. Oh, yep.
And it's like an old stone building with a bunch of tents outside during part of the year where they have these big flea markets. And I actually should start looking in the pawn shops more. My problem with the pawn shops around here is that they over romanticize everything they have. So
they jack that price, yeah.
Since Pawn Stars, dude. Since Pawn Stars was out. Yeah, every pawn shop started blue booking everything and thinking what they had, and now it's gold. Everything's gold. It's a vintage guitar. Oh, it's $400. I mean, there's no way that they're getting value. I mean, you pretty much have to walk in there with a ridiculously low amount of cash and say, "I'll take this right now." And it's got broken stuff on it. You can sell it now or you don't. And then you get a deal, but you just don't find those parlors and stuff anymore. And even people on Craigslist and stuff ask too much for those things. I'm kind of scouring Reverb for stuff that needs work that I don't have to pay $75 shipped for, which is starting to get ridiculous how some of these people list these things. But I'm just so into these old harmonies and stuff now that I have to start upping up my game for finding them. I only want to pay a certain price for them, and I don't. If I got to pay more than $100, I don't want the guitar. That's not what it's for, But anyway, I probably talked too long on this topic, guys, but appreciate it.
Yeah, that pawn shop thing really bothers me, because when I was a kid, my second tube amp was something I found for $25 at a pawn shop because they didn't know what it was. It had those great old. It was like a kind of a industrial brown color, and it was 20 watts. And I looked in there and I saw 4 RCA 6L6s. And I'm like, I bet this is a tube amp. And so I took it home and I just started randomly, I randomly plugged it into a speaker cabinet. And I'm like, yep, this is a tube amp. So I made a 4x12 with my grandpa and I played that thing and it just shook. You know, it was so loud and so much fun until the caps melted on it. And, you know, $25. And I got the chance to do that. But nowadays they would look it up and they'd be like, oh, well, this is 120. Well, no, it's not worth 125 because it lasted me a year and it blew up. You know, it's worth $25. That's fine. You know, and you guys got that. You got your money back out of it. And hey, that's what pawn shops are for. They're not for, it's not an antique store. You want to make your pawn shop and do it.
It's not a freaking music store either, and these guys act like they are, like they're musicians, and most of them aren't. Yeah. And it's like, well, that's a Fender, so? It's not a good Fender. It's got issues. You know, I mean...
you're missing a bolt in the back there and the neck plate, and it's a you know, a 15-year-old MIM. It's not worth anything, you know?
3 saddles are gone. You know, I mean, most of the time, it's just completely beat to hell. I mean... The only thing you can get a deal on in pawn shops anymore is like PV Raptors. Like that's the only thing they ever have. If they have anything Fender or Gibson in there, it's like at least $400.
Yeah.
And you just can't get those deals anymore. And I mean, there's some groups that I've been in where they're like, man, you just got to have money in hand and you got to be ready to buy. But that's like stuff like I'm seeing that more down south and stuff like that. Like I don't see anything up here anymore. I think it's because most people, if they want any value out of anything and they know any better, they go to a music store. And Craigslist now. I mean, Craigslist. I can't believe Craigslist hasn't killed pawn shops yet. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an episode, guys. Just want to tell you all happy Thanksgiving, right?
Happy Thanksgiving. And tomorrow we can start saying Merry Christmas.
Yep.
Some may
listening
disagree.
to Christmas songs, and Clifton and I at least will probably be playing Christmas songs out of our ears for the next 6 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Oh, not looking for. I don't like Christmas songs.
It's the most challenging time of the year.
But it's a great time too.
Yeah.
Cue the Paul McCartney. How much money do you think Paul McCartnney has made off that song? Simply having
how much money?
That song, like, it trips me out because like it's like off time on purpose, like the beat on it, you know.
Yeah, and the keyboard sound, and actually it's got really cool sounds in it. It's just not a good song.
No, it's terrible. It's terrible, and you should take it off the air. And somebody needs to write a better Christmas song. And why they haven't done that yet, I have no idea.
Guys, we're wasting podcast gold.
Willie Nelson, Frosty the Snowman. That's the best one.
Wait, what?
Willie Nelson does a Frosty the Snowman. You got to go listen to it.
No, not this week. Not this week.
All right, fine.
Save it. All right. Have a great week, guys, and thanks for listening.
Have a great week.
Happy
Get your Whirly Bird shirts.